I don't need to say this to your audience or the researchers space, but more money is obviously better than less money. So advocacy, engaging with members of Congress, engaging with the administration leads to more money. What I will say on that front, though, is money needs to be spent. Brenda said it's taxpayer money. The money needs to be spent in a wise and efficient way, which to me means most of the money should go to aging research because that's the wisest and most efficient way to spend that taxpayer money.
Welcome to Longevity by Design, a podcast designed to give individuals access to the leading scientific information in the field of longevity. The ability to add years to your life and life to your years needs no opinion. Join us as we ask science to take the wheel. In each episode, Dr. Gil Blander joins a co-host and an industry expert in the field of longevity, shining a light and getting the answers to the key question: how can we live a longer, healthier life?
Hello, I'm Dr. Gil Blander. Welcome to Longevity by Design, how to live a longer, healthier life. We are produced by InstaTracker, your science-based guide to optimize your body from the inside out. Today, we have a very special episode focused on how public policy can accelerate breakthrough in longevity research. I'm thrilled to welcome the leadership team from the Alliance for Longevity Initiative, or A4LI. Joining us today is Dylan Livingston, CEO of A4LI. Dylan is a seasoned leader in the longevity and biotech sectors, with extensive experience bridging science, policy, and entrepreneurship. As a CEO of A4LI, it drives the organization's mission to advance longevity research and advocate for policy that accelerates scientific breakthrough in aging and healthspan extension. Also with us today is Brenda Eap, the PhD, VP of Communication and Partnership at A4LI. Brenda brings deep background in science, communication, and partnership development to her role, leading efforts to translate complex longevity research into actionable insight for policymakers, industry leaders, and public. Her work ensures A4LI initiatives are both scientifically rigorous and widely understood, helping building collaboration that accelerate impact in the longevity field. Before we dive in, a quick reminder. If you are enjoying Longevity by Design, make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review and rating. It's really helped more people discover this important conversation. And of course, share this episode with anyone who's passionate about longevity and healthspan. Dylan and Brenda, it's fantastic to have you here. Let's start by hearing a little more about your personal journey and what led you both to A4LI. Dylan, awesome. Could you tell us how you came to lead A4LI and what inspired you, your passion for longevity advocacy?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having us on, Gil. I appreciate this. I'm a fan of your podcast and the people that you've had on before, so it's an honor to be here. So yeah, I'll give you the little quick backstory of how I came to found and lead A4LI. So I started my career in politics. Actually, let me back up a little before that. So I have a father who is a broker dealer on Wall Street. He's always been interested in next generation technologies, space, AI, and longevity was one of them. And so one day when he was driving me to school, he showed me a video of a guy he met at a conference. And I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. And he showed me the video, and it was a man with a very long beard. And I think we all probably know who that man is. It was Aubrey de Grey, and he was talking about quest to defeat aging. But maybe you're not cognizant enough to understand the intricacies of what he was talking about, but I was captured by that beard. And so I've always known about the space, but it kind of got tucked away in things that I know in the back of my mind. I worked in politics in college and coming out of college for different campaigns and organizations and things of that nature, headlined by my work with the Biden campaign in 2020. At the same time, obviously, COVID was running rampant through our population, and my senior year of college got shut down. And so I was stuck in the basement wondering why, how did this happen? Watching my grandfather, who actually just turned 98 last month, but was 92 at the time, deal with some health issues. And it kind of put me into this spiral of I graduated college. What's the next step? The next step's getting married. What's the next step after that? Oh, it's age-related decline. That doesn't seem too fun. And I realized after listening to people like Aubrey and David Sinclair and a bunch of the leaders in the space that there was a genuine calling for political action, right? They talked about how the scientists were coming around to this idea of longevity, how investors were starting to get involved, and the next step was getting government action on the table. And so at the age of 22, I don't know if this is bravery or delusion, but I decided that it was on me to make it happen. I put together A4LI at the end of 2021, and we officially launched the organization in January 2022.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll get more into the organization later. And by the way, both Aubrey and David Sinclair have been guests in this podcast. So anyone that want to hear more about them, please go back and see earliest episode. And also, I have been the pleasure to be in your last event in Washington, D.C. And I have to say that was an amazing event. And I'm looking forward to the next event in 2026. So definitely what you are doing is very exciting and very important. But before we go that, I would like to introduce Brenda to our audience. So can you please provide your background, Brenda, and why have you decided to join A4LI?
Yeah, thanks again, Gil, for having me on here. So I'm a scientist by training, and I studied ketone body metabolism in mice and sex differences at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging in California, and was really fell in love with the approach of the science, right? I started studying senescence in plants and then quickly gravitated towards mammals and aging. And it was really trained by one of the best mentors ever. He's an MD PhD. He's a geriatrician, so he looks at aging as a very systemic problem, and really been trained by him. Really casts a different perspective on how we approach aging and the geroscience hypothesis. But I think growing up, I've always been a part of some sort of leadership and advocacy. So I don't think it's a surprise that I'm with the Alliance for Longevity Initiative now and really spearheading policy and partnerships in this field. But I really just fell in love with the whole mission of A4LI. After I graduated, I was thinking about if there were any advocacy groups that wasn't just focused on cancer and Alzheimer's. I participated and volunteered for a lot of groups like those, right? An AIDS walk and like that growing up in high school. So I was really fascinated and curious about if something advocacy group focused on longevity in general existed. And I was quickly introduced to Dylan. I think we connected over email, and we quickly hopped on a call to talk about A4LI and what he was doing, because he was just, it was a one-man show, right? Like Dylan was just traveling to like conferences, meeting companies in the space, and like what are the gaps and barriers in policy, right, that he can help advocate for. So with my scientific background, I think I bring in a unique perspective that I think we might dive into later, but I'm just really passionate about advocating for my colleagues and research academics and companies that are really looking to increase healthy lifespan for everyone in the society. So I really enjoy it. So I'm really grateful to Dylan for creating the Alliance for Initiatives.
Well, thank you, Brenda, for joining.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that it's a very important organization. So let's talk about the organization. And I assume that at least some of our listeners, I hope that all of them heard about it, but I assume that some haven't. So let's describe what A4LI is doing and what make it unique in the longevity ecosystem.
Sure. So A4LI's mission is to advocate for policies and legislation that extend healthy lifespan. And so when we were starting the organization, we made our mission statement that for a particular reason, and that reason is so that we as A4LI can work with a coalition of different partners, right? When you talk about longevity medicine, everybody goes to the hallmarks of aging, but there's an argument to be made that self-driving cars is a longevity intervention, right? How many people die prematurely from getting into a car accident? And so if we made our mission statement too narrow, it would prevent us from working with as many people as possible, with as many groups as possible. But at our core, we are pushing for research and discovery in the biology of aging. I came to this endeavor believing, and I still believe, obviously, that is the best bang for our buck when it comes to actually extending healthy lifespan is attacking the root cause of aging and age-related disease. So that's our mission statement. That's the goal of A4LI. I don't know if we're going to get into some of the accomplishments of the organization in our 3 years, but a lot of our work so far has been focused on moving things forward for this new subsect of the biotech field in longevity.
Yeah, that's great. And why do you think that policy advocacy is so critical for longevity research compared to, let's say, other fields like cancer or health or neurodegenerative diseases? Why aging?
Well, the other fields understand the value of advocacy, and that's why when you look at the NCI's budget, it's, I don't know, 20 times as high as the budget for aging research. Those industry associations have really taken to the idea of lobbying and to the idea of policy development. And that's why we see all the money and all the focus going there. And so what A4LI is aiming to do is have a seat at that table and get aging biology the resources and the credit that it's due. Without, when I first came this idea, I realized that no other group in the longevity space was doing this, right? There were advocacy groups that were doing social outreach and scientific research and a lot of biotechs, but no group solely focused to interfacing with Washington. And that's where that's where things happen, right? We talk a lot about aging as a disease. Well, we can't get aging to be classified as a disease, whether you believe that, to be the right move or not. Those conversations can't happen without engaging FDA, right? We talk about the minimal budget for aging research. Well, we can't fix that unless we have those conversations with members of Congress, the administration, and NIH, right? So
Yeah.
It's sorely needed. We're pushing every day to bring more companies, more sponsors on board so that we can amplify our efforts and bring more Brendas and Dylans on the team to get this mission accomplished. Brenda and I, Jonathan, we are, it's a small team of 3. We are mighty, but there is limitations to what 3 people can do. So this is a call out to the rest of the field. And Gil, I want to say thank you for your support for A4LI. I'm encouraging everybody listening to get involved at whatever level they can, because, that's how we're going to move this forward, with more resources going towards this policy and lobbying effort, which will in turn give the field more resources to get the job done.
Yeah, and just a clarification for our audience, NCI is National Cancer Institute. And
Yep.
what Dylan is saying, that they receive, every dollar that the aging research receive, cancer receive $20. And cancer is only part of the aging-related diseases. Yep. Because you have neurodegenerative diseases and metabolic-related diseases, and all of them actually under aging. So it makes a lot of sense. And as I said, I had the pleasure to join your event in Washington. That was, I think, in April. And it was really refreshing and interesting for me to meet senators and even some government people, and to understand that actually that's the big game field. And if you want to change policy, you need to do it there. You cannot do it at Harvard or at Stanford. You have to go to Washington and do it there. So it's definitely opened my eye. I didn't know that. I'm sure that I knew that, but it wasn't, somehow it wasn't clear to me. So I assume that now it's clear to me, and hopefully by this discussion today, it will be clearer to our audience. So Dylan, at the beginning you said that you have some accomplishment and achievement for A4LI. And again, it's a young organization. It just started it like 4 years ago. But I would love to hear what are the accomplishments that the organization achieved so far.
Yeah. So the first big thing that we got done as an organization, we launched publicly January 2022. So that's when A4LI activities really started. The first goal of the organization was to form a caucus in the House of Representatives. So a formal group of members of Congress that are aligned on the mission of longevity and, able to be our spokespeople in the halls of Congress. And so we put that together in February of 2023, which I always like to mention this because nothing is bipartisan these days, but our caucus is, right? And I think that speaks to the nature of the issue we're advocating for here, no matter whether you're right or left or, white or black or, whatever divisions we want to draw in society. This is a common universal human interest to live as healthy as possible for as long as possible. So we, with the intention of making it bipartisan, made it bipartisan. The caucus is led by Congressman Gus Bilirakis from Florida and Congressman Paul Tonko from New York. And we've been steadily growing that over the last couple years. We just had an announcement that 2 more Congress people joined in April, or 3 more, sorry. And then as a result of this fly-in, we have a lot of interest from other offices to join as well. So we'll be making an announcement about that sometime in the next 2 months, finalizing who the new members of the Longevity Science Caucus are. So that's really great, right? What that does, one, is gives us a base of support in Congress, but it also gives us a group of Congress people we can bounce legislative ideas off of. And so that's the process of getting the ball rolling, is actually having that foundational support in Congress. Then on top of that, like you mentioned, we've held 2 pretty robust conferences in DC, where we've done this engagement with members of Congress that have led to the growth of this caucus. So 2 other things. On top of that, we've developed a number of unique policy papers for the longevity field to advocate for, with input by the longevity field. So the advanced approval pathway for longevity medicine is one of them, and that describes a pathway, an expedited approval pathway for companies in the longevity biotech space to apply for and hopefully get accepted under, to make the drug development process easier. And the second one is called NIHLAR, NIHLAR, the National Institute of Healthy Longevity and Aging Research. And so that's our vision for what a standalone institute at NIH would look like if it was totally focused on longevity and aging research. And so those 2 things. And then probably the most impressive thing that we've done is we've gotten 2 laws passed in the state of Montana since 2023, expanding eligibility under the Right to Try Act. Now, I'm sure some of your listeners know this. I'm sure you know this too. A lot of people in America are interested in medical tourism and leave the country with the intent to get an experimental treatment. And so places down in Central America, places in Europe and in the islands are all locations for these experimental treatments. And, I looked at that and I said, well, if someone's taking an experimental treatment, why would you want to go, not in America, right? Like if I'm going to take an experimental treatment, I want to be in a place that I'm comfortable with, where I can, go home without having to show my passport, and, I speak the same language as everybody, right? So that's what we did in Montana in 2023. We expanded who is eligible under Right to Try. And what the framework of that looks like is, if you are, so Right to Try right now, the national law that was passed in 2017, is only applicable for terminally ill patients. But what we did in Montana was open it up to all patients, healthy, chronically ill, and terminally ill patients, with the idea being a lot of people in the longevity industry don't want to wait until they're terminally ill in order to try an experimental treatment. They want to, the whole ethos of the longevity field is proactive health, preventative health, right? And so people who are healthy should also have this right to try something if they believe it will be beneficial to their health. And then what we did in 2025, a couple months ago, was basically operationalize that original law. So give standards for practitioners and clinics, licensure for doctors, things of that nature. And so now we're seeing a bunch of clinics that are interested in moving out to Montana to provide this experimental treatment with the longevity mindset. So that's very exciting. If you are out there listening right now and you want to try something on the experimental side, look at Montana as your location.
And Dylan and Brenda, why Montana? That was an opportunistic opportunity, or you think that something is unique in Montana?
I could give you the real answer, but it's probably not what I want to do. So I'll give you the fake answer, but it's still somewhat real. But I was introduced to the president pro tempore of the state Senate, Ken Bogner, back at the end of 2022. And my goal then was to speak to anybody who had any semblance of political power and pitch them on this idea of longevity. And so I had about an hour and a half call with Ken, really explain the field, what the goals were, how Montana could take a leading role here. And he was extremely excited. And so what he asked me to do was send him a bunch of options for how Montana could support this field. One of those recommendations was Right to Try. And Right to Try really does resonate with the Montana political mindset as well, right? Montana's a very independent state. It's out in the middle of the country. They don't want the government kind of coming in and telling them what they can and can't do. And so it fit the libertarian mindset of Montana. So that was probably why Ken was so aligned with it. But Ken really took it and ran with it in 2023 and got it passed pretty comfortably in the House and the Senate. And so that's the origin story of why Montana. It would be great to do this in California too, because that's where all the biotechs are and that's where a lot of the interested people are. But, it was sort of just by chance that we ran into Montana, but it turns out to be a great state to do it there too.
Yeah. And are you planning to take it to other states, or for now just leave Montana as the leader and wait to see?
So yeah, what I would like to see happen is a Montana style regulatory system for different states around the country, maybe not all the states, but in geographically primed positions. So the next state in my mind right now is New Hampshire. New Hampshire obviously is a 45-minute drive from Boston, again, has this libertarian mindset in their political ecosystem. And then also they just actually, I believe yesterday or the day before, passed a strengthening of the existing right to try there, which touches on some of the initiatives that we pushed in Montana, but not all of them, not the opening up who is eligible and who is not. But they really did a great job on strengthening the liability laws, which is a major hindrance for right to try. A lot of people are worried, a lot of biotechs and providers are worried that if they, provide a therapeutic to a terminally ill patient and they die, then they're on the hook and can be sued. And so they really strengthened those laws, which is a great first step, because right to try as a concept since 2017 has been, maybe utilized 10 to 15 times, like 10 to 15, very rarely. And so, we have this law in place, but it's not being utilized, and it's because of these liability protection issues. And so New Hampshire took a really concrete step there to rectify that. And I think that probably opens the door for a Montana style regulatory system out in New Hampshire at some point. So that's what we're looking at next. Florida would be great. Arizona would be great too. And then, once you have all four of those set up, then you have a longevity state or a right to try state like this in every corner of the country. So, people in Georgia don't need to fly to Montana or New Hampshire. They can go down to Florida. Or New Mexico can go to Arizona, right? And so the proximity there too is a factor. And, I think having it geographically dispersed is the right move.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And as you said, New Hampshire is, I would say, even half an hour from my house. And I'm spending a lot of time there. And every time that you cross the border, you can see the motorcycle without the helmet. And they are much more progressive to the good and the bad. I think that if you look at the plate of the car, it's basically live free or die. That's their slogan. And I think that what you are doing is great, because you are extracting the good from every opportunity. So that's very encouraging. And I want to get off the script for a second and discuss the new administration. And I've been in the event in Washington in April, and I've seen suddenly the head of the HSS coming and presenting to us. And I think that now the head of the health system in the US government is thinking very similarly about longevity than what we. So can you describe it right now and basically describe the opportunity? Because I was completely changing my mind after the event, and I think that this will be good for our audience to listen to you and Brenda, and you will explain in your world what happened and what are the opportunities that you can have with the current administration.
Cool. Brenda, you go first.
Well, I'm pretty optimistic about it. I know, ever since Dylan established April back in 2022, we've done a lot so far that Dylan had mentioned. But of course, we had to also face a changing administration right back in November. So a lot has changed, and a lot of talk about being more efficient and effective, right, in terms of funding and NIH. So we've been really busy thinking about that stuff as people are thinking about how to better fund aging biology and biomedical research. But it's refreshing to see other VCs and companies talk about the administration in a positive light, right? With, the new FDA commissioner, Dr. Martin Makary, talking about David Sinclair's work in cellular rejuvenation, and RFK Jr., right, with the Maha bill, and Jim O'Neill, that I think Dylan will kind of talk about how we have a close relationship with him, and he was almost going to be on our board of directors. And his presidency at the SENS Research Foundation, right? So like these people are all aligned, and like to put a bow on it too, we worked closely with Dr. Mike Raisin, and he was actually a key player to bringing Dr. Oz to our congressional briefing. And I think you were there, right? So it was really inspiring. And I was like, everyone was like, wow, this is, like the current administration is actually talking about neuroscience and aging biology and how that closely fits with making America healthy again, and really starting with like chronic diseases and like in children, right? Because we don't do enough longitudinal studies. So to see them really focusing on like the younger population as we kind of figure out, the middle age and the older population, it's like a good puzzle, right? Like that, all the pieces are falling into. So I'm really excited. We've been really busy with just communicating with key players like that. So I won't reveal too much, but I think Dylan and I have been doing a great job engaging with key players like those.
Yeah, it's refreshing, right? It's so obvious to us in the ecosystem that this is what HHS should be talking about, especially when you look at the trends of demographics in the U.S., right? This is a worldwide issue. Obviously, the population's getting older. We're having less children, and so the proportion of older people is greater than it was 10 years ago, and will be greater 10 years from now than what it is today. And so this is the issue that we need to be talking about. How do we keep older people, younger people, everybody, but how do we keep the growing portion of our population that's getting older healthier, so that they're not reliant on Medicare, so they're not reliant on Social Security, so that they can actually, be involved in the economy productively. But then also, how can we keep them engaged with society, right? There's a lot of different answers. You can do programs for them. You can expand Medicare. You can do this, that, or the other thing. But the beautiful part about geroscience is it cuts through all of that, and it goes to the root cause of the issue, which is the fact that they're getting older, right? And when you get older and you lose your capability to do things, you're not as productive, and you're taking from the system, and you're not able to be as socially integrated as you once were, right? And so it's encouraging to see people like Jim O'Neill get appointed to deputy HHS director, or secretary. It's encouraging to see Dr. Oz come and speak at our events, and not only speak and give some boilerplate template kind of talk, but really speak about the field in a sophisticated way. We have people now for the first time in my life, and I'm only 27, so my life's not too long, but for the first time in my conscious life, anybody is talking about these issues and actually championing these issues in a major way. So it's very exciting. What I will say about 2024, it was a weird year because everybody knew who the political candidates were for president. And so my take on it is the right and the left were both holding out for Biden/Harris or Trump to win. And there's no reason for bipartisan compromise if you have full control of the House, Senate, and presidency. And so really in 2024, we focused on, growing our capabilities as an organization, spinning out these policy papers that we wanted the next administration to focus on. And now that we have that in place, and the right administration and the right people in the administration in place, I think the sky's the limit. And we're working actively with Jim O'Neill, with other folks. And I don't want to name drop too much, but other people in the administration to make these policies a reality. So it's very exciting. Hopefully the next time we do this, Gil, we'll be able to, let's check back in a year, and hopefully by then we'll have some major legislation that's in the process of being signed.
As a Longevity by Design podcast listener, you understand the value of improving your health for today and for all the years ahead. And if you want to live your healthiest, longest life possible, you need to understand what's going on inside. At Inside Tracker, we take a personalized approach to Healthspan optimization that eliminates guesswork from your wellness plan. Inside Tracker analyzes blood biomarker and DNA data, along with physiomarker data from fitness trackers like Oura Ring, to deliver personalized food, supplement, lifestyle, and exercise recommendations that allow you to take control and improve your health span. And for a limited time, Longevity by Design listeners can get 20% off at the Inside Tracker store. So if you're ready to receive a personal health analysis and data-driven wellness plan to optimize your body for the long haul, then it's time to start inside. Visit insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today. That's insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today.
Yeah, I can provide my own impression from the event. So I didn't know Dr. Oz too much, other than seeing some clips of his TV show once in a while. So I haven't had a lot of expectation. And when I heard him talking at the event, I said, actually, he's saying what I'm saying. It was amazing. Let's have prevention is what important. Don't spend billions of dollars or trillions of dollars on treating sick people, but work on prevention. And prevention is food, is exercise, is lifestyle, and it's much cheaper. And not only you will save money, but you can also save life and extend the lifespan of those people. So I said, wow, that's amazing. I never heard it from a politician. Again, he's a clinician and all of that, but still, I haven't heard from someone so I have that actually is saying exactly what I'm preaching for the last, 20 years. So I was very excited about that. And again, some people like this administration, some people don't, but my feeling is that we have here a great opportunity for the longevity domain with right people that are thinking similarly. You can also take the Kennedy Jr. that also think about longevity and how we can do it. So I think that in a way, or in opportunistic way, we have here a great opportunity in the next 3.5 years to make a big move for the longevity domain. And I think that organization like A4LI is the right organization to move the needle there and help those high up ministers and people that working in the government to help us, and also lawmakers to help us to go there. So I really believe that we have a great opportunity, and I think that it's a great opportunity for our listeners that haven't been in your event, because we have been only, 100 people. So how can we transmit it to thousands of people? That's my little help that I can give you to transmit it to more people, and hopefully that will help them understand, and hopefully later on we'll see what is the action that you are expecting from them in order to bring it to the right ear and brain, and hopefully change policy. So
what I just want to say there quickly, Gil, is yes, this administration is unique in its approach to longevity and the discussions that they're having and the people that are involved. But like I said in the beginning, this is a bipartisan issue, right? This is something that affects everybody. This shouldn't be something that the Republicans take on and as a result the Democrats oppose. So our goal is, if the Democrats win in 2028 or 2029, whatever, 2028, we want their administration to be filled with pro-longevity people too. And we want, the succeeding regimes to be those that are actually, putting these issues front and center. So yes, we have a great opportunity now, but I and A4LI will be working to make, this not just a one-off thing. And it shouldn't be a one-off thing. This is something that, as time goes by, I think more people are coming on and drinking the Kool-Aid and understanding that this is the right approach to medicine. And our goal is to make sure that our, the higher ups, no matter what party, what, affiliation they have, understand this and are putting it into action.
I'm 100% for you with you. I'm just again want to say that we have now an opportunity that I don't want to miss. And now I want to talk a bit about the intersection of policy and science. So maybe if you can talk a bit about that, either you or Brenda or both of you, how can public policy accelerate research in aging and healthspan extension? What do you envision? How can they do that?
Brenda, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, well, I think the importance here is that something like this, like A4LI, exists, right? We want to be the only organization to be representing all the companies and the clinics and the research institutions really moving the needle forward, right? We're there to represent them on the Hill and work with our lobbyists to really engage and educate and inform what's happening. And of course, that we've been really grass tops ever since, Dylan created this organization, but we focused on grassroots lately. We've, do that with like national polling and focus groups. And I really enjoy doing focus groups because you really talk to, a selected, like a small group, 6 to 10 people, really like getting them to understand and get an understanding what their background is in longevity. Like, what are they trying to achieve? What is their purpose, right? Like because in the end, this affects everyone and we want to just benefit society. So really engaging with grassroots members is really a focus of mine. And I think Dylan said in the past year, in the summer, especially with our like letter writing campaign, right? I think Gil, you touched up on this nicely earlier that, you didn't realize that meeting with local representatives and senators was such a low-hanging fruit, right? It's so accessible that Dylan and I are trying to bring that accessibility to everyone and really educate people on how to do it correctly. So, I think we have an important role to play here in engaging with important stakeholders, not just the company side, but, people who are paying into this, right? Like we're using taxpayers' money, right? That really fuels the big budget of NIH and what we're advocating for aging biology. So there's a lot to do. And of course, Dylan had mentioned we're a lean and mighty team, but we get it done. And we're just looking for more support and volunteers to help us move the needle here.
Yeah. What I'll say is, look, there are two buckets really we can affect here, right? We can affect the funding bucket and we can affect the regulatory bucket. I don't need to say this to your audience or the researchers in the space, but more money is obviously better than less money. So advocacy, engaging with members of Congress, engaging with the administration leads to more money. What I will say on that front, though, is the money needs to be spent, like Brenda said, it's taxpayer money. The money needs to be spent in a wise and efficient way, which to me means most of the money should go to aging research because that's the wisest and most efficient way to spend that taxpayer money, right? And then the second one is regulatory. And so clearly we can see that, companies are struggling to get their drugs to market because they are doing this like false indication where they're going after an age-related disease when their drug is created and using the mechanisms of the biology of aging. What I will say also is, as the government's, this is sort of like a loop, right? The industry encourages the government to write policy. And then that policy encourages more institutional investment and more kind of mainstream investors to get involved. And that leads to more policy. And it's a loop which ultimately leads to the maturation of a field. And so as we, we're obviously thinking about the current environment and the current players in the ecosystem when we're writing these regulatory ideas. But what we're also hoping is that new players enter the space. The odds of getting a drug to market from the preclinical stages, it's less than 10%. I think it's probably closer to 1%, right? So it's really hard. And what that tells me is we just need more shots on goal. We don't, 5 longevity companies isn't enough. 100 longevity companies is probably not enough. We need 1,000 longevity or 10,000 longevity companies. And so that's what this political advocacy leads to. It not only leads to bettering the environment for the current players, it leads to the growth of the industry and, a higher likelihood that we do have a drug that does affect, or a therapy that affects the biology of aging and that does actually extend healthy lifespan by X number of years, right? So that's the way that I look at it.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense because now we are in the explosion in the aging domain. There are so many targets for drugs, and there are so many drugs that are now in even phase 3 that related to aging-related diseases. And I really think that we are in an inflection point, and getting the right policy and the right budget for those academic institutes, but also remove red tapes for companies. It's so important to allow us to bring it to the market and allow all of us to enjoy from the fruit of that. So absolutely, it's
I want to say that it's really frustrating because I feel like the longevity field tries to sit in a mold that doesn't fit, right? It's like we have to like squeeze ourselves into the cancer realm or like the Alzheimer's, right? Because that's where the policy is, and that's where the strongest policy exists, right? So for our job is to really like modernize those policies, to broaden those policies to fit longevity medicine into it. So that's what we've been working on. And, I think it's really important to see that. And it's just really frustrating to see these clinical trials fail, but the drugs are perfectly fine. It's just the wrong indication. And it takes, multi-million dollars and a lot of bandwidth to realize that. Right. And we want to change that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great point. And Brenda, that's bringing me to the next subject. It's a great transition. And I would love to hear your perspective on communication and how does A4LI communicate longevity science to policymakers and the public. I know that it's hard. I'm trying to, that's what I'm doing in this podcast, and it's very hard because we have a lot of terms that are very hard and a lot of acronyms that it's not easy for someone that is not a PhD in biology like you are, Brenda, to understand. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so we do it in different ways. For us, Dylan and I, we try to. Well, it's interesting because I work with Dylan. Dylan, obviously does a lot of reading in the field, but isn't an expertise in the field. But it's nice to like learn from each other and understand what we understand from each other before we talk with members of Congress and congressional staffers, right? So it's nice to like fact check each other and kind of boil it down to simple terms. And that's really a passion of mine because for the longest, I go to conferences as a scientist and trainee, and I talk about my science all the time, and it's like the same people, right? So like for me, it's like, why don't we bring this information to like actual like big decision makers that are, dictating the funding that gets allocated to this field. So for me, like boiling it down and really making it digestible to like just anyone, layman terms, my parents, my cousins who don't have a scientific, like that's fun for me. So that's what we try to do with congressional staffers too, right? Like for instance, like senescence, we know it as zombie cells, right? That secrete these like toxins in our body, and like who doesn't know about inflammation, right? It's about acute and like chronic inflammation. That's when you get technical. So people can relate to pain, like back pain and like chronic illnesses, and all of us are caretakers to some degree, right? So they understand like the fruit and labor and the burden that we like that exist and people go through when they're caretaking for like someone who has cancer or Alzheimer's, right? So for me, it's really just boiling down those concepts and focusing on the bigger picture, because as a scientist, we can get really technical and in like very nitty gritty detailed about a mechanism, right? But what is like the bigger picture here, right? It's sarcopenia, it's like osteoporosis, right? And then we really then boil it down to like the mechanisms if they're interested, but it's really focusing on the bigger picture. And we work closely with our lobbyists on that because they work on like other diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. And I think the last thing I'll say is, everyone pulls up the hallmarks of aging diagram, right? And then they just like point to it for like 30 seconds, but they don't really explain it. And they're like, so like broadening, just talking about the overlaps of cancer and Alzheimer's with the hallmarks of aging is really important. And I'm a visual learner, so I really try to make everything as visual as possible for our staffers and our members of Congress to understand. And if you look at, what your local representative, they're probably on like the diabetes caucus, right? They're like the cancer caucus and stuff like that. And like, we're here to try to like tie it in together with longevity medicine. And I think they understand like diabetes, right? And obesity, right? But like not really like connecting the dots to aging biology. And that's what I try to do. And then of course, if we engage with our stakeholders, our sponsors, right? Our partners, like, Kristen and Eric, Joe will meet with their local representatives too and talk about the pipeline, right? In layman terms. And they're really great at that, right? Because they're always pitching their company in different formats. So, we do typical engagements like those year round.
Yeah, what I'll say on that is the minute you start mentioning like an acronym of any sort or like, any technical terms, I found that when you speak to members of Congress, they, that's when their brain starts shutting down a little bit. And I feel like I'm well positioned to explain this field because my brain also shuts down when I start getting into that nitty gritty stuff, right? I'm able to explain it because I understand it the way that they probably will understand it too. So what I found is, the general concepts of the biology of aging rather than the intricate details hits a lot harder when you're talking to these stakeholders and these people in positions of power. I would say they care less about the mechanisms and more about the implications, right? So talking about job creation, talking about, economic productivity, talk about reduced spending, talk about, health disparity, the gap between health disparities closing. Those are the things that they really want to see, right? They care about less about the how and more about the what happens. And so that's really more when I go speak to a member of Congress or a staffer or whoever it may be in these positions, that's really what I focus on. The implications of longevity science rather than the nitty gritty details of what longevity science is. I've also found that if they go into this, if they need a framework to understand, I found personally that the aging car analogy works really well. And some people in the audience might push back and say that's not a great representation or whatever you might say, but it's something that everybody can wrap their mind around, right? If you are a car and you have a 10-year lifespan on average based on what you come out of the factory as, your lifespan of the car is going to decrease if you drive over bumpy roads and you spill crap in your car all day, right? But if you replace the engine and furnish the seats and yada yada yada, that car has a better chance of living 15 years. And something simple like that, while might not be completely scientifically accurate, gives them a framework to understand. Say, oh, I understand aging. It's something I'm getting a new car next week because my car broke down, right? Yeah. It's something that they can wrap their minds around within the context of what they already know. And then the other thing I will say is, when you're speaking to these stakeholders, especially Congress people, staffers, what you have to understand is that you're one of 20 conversations that day with people exactly like you who are, advocating for their specific field and making an ask of that member of Congress. And so being short and succinct and to the point is really important. You don't want to be explaining the field for 30 minutes and then, you don't get to actually ask what you want to ask for. It's always better to, 5 minutes introducing the field, 5 minutes of what, we need to have done to make this field move forward. And then, 5 minutes of questioning. That's the best format rather than, 12, 13 minutes of explaining the field and then making a quick ask and then, you going on your way.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy, the car. I actually used it many times, and I agree with you. It's something that, because everyone has a car, not everyone is using senescence cells every day.
Right.
Or, I don't know, doing epigenetic rejuvenation. Most people don't understand even what does it mean. So going into a car and talking about it, and I think that's something that definitely is simple for every audience. I think that it's very important to communicate well, and I agree with you all the acronym is, I'm sometimes don't remember a specific acronym, so I think that for everyone it's good not to use them as much as we are using it. But that's something really American. The American love the acronym.
Well, use your acronyms in your scientific talk in at the science conferences, right? But when you're talking to someone outside the field, calibrate a little more. That's my
exactly advice. Know your audience. I always say it. Know who are you talking with. So that's great. And I want to now talk about the future. So where do you see? Maybe it's for you, Dylan, because you are the founder. Where do you see the A4LI in the next going in the next 5 to 10 years? And what milestone would represent success for the organization?
Well, if you ask me what success looked like 3 years ago, I always have to remember where I was 4 years ago when I first started the organization, and where we are now is somewhere that I didn't, I didn't really think about or have any expectation for. I was just trying to, channel my passion for a healthier, longer life into something productive. And so, the reason why I bring that up is, the future is unwritten, right? We don't know what, look, Jim O'Neill and the administration could come tomorrow and put out the MAHA bill, and our function changes from a policy producer to a general grassroots advocate, right? So it's hard to give you a straight answer, but in the next 5 years, what I would like to see is either, and this is what we're pushing for, is a major piece of legislation, maybe called the Longevity Initiatives legislation, styled after A4LI's name, but a major piece of legislation that touches on all the issues that affect and prevent the longevity biotech field from flourishing. Now, it doesn't need to be the Longevity Initiatives bill, right? It could be part of a larger MAHA or health bill. But, in one swipe of the pen, in one stroke of the pen, getting all of the things that we want to get done. It's a lot easier than, fighting multiple battles with, CMS and the FDA and NIH and all these different agencies that affect how the longevity field functions. The better path is producing, a comprehensive piece of legislation that we're working on as we speak, and getting it signed in one act. And so that's what we're pushing for over the next 5 years. Hopefully a heck of a lot sooner. And then, once there is legislation like that, to my point before, I expect the field to grow by leaps and bounds, right? When the government signals that they are legitimizing a field, then the private industry legitimizes the field, then the government further legitimizes that field, and so on and so forth. And so we need sort of this landmark piece of legislation to start that process forward. And that's, the kind of the North Star of me and Brenda and the A4LI team over these next couple of years.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And we discussed it before that I agree with you. There is an opportunity now and we shouldn't miss it. So I'm happy that you are trying to focus on that. And my next question is, how can our audience, specifically scientists, entrepreneurs, and normal citizens can support this movement? And what can they do in order to help you?
Sure. So if you are a biotech company, if you are a research institution, if you're an investor investing in longevity, you should come and support our work as a sponsor. Gil, you are a sponsor. You're currently a sponsor. You get an invitation to our DC summit. You get opportunities to meet with representatives. You stay at the forefront of developing the policies that we're advocating for. So, if you're a company and you want to be involved in that conversation, become a sponsor of A4LI. If you're, not a part of a company, if you're just more of an enthusiast of this field, I would encourage you to do two things. So the bigger ask here is for you to become a member of A4LI. When you look at A4LI's budget compared to the budget of the American Cancer Society or the Alzheimer's Association, we're raising, we're raising less than their CEO makes per year. Right. If we want to have a seat at the table, and, with that all being said, we have done quite a bit with a limited budget, really, really a lot. And so the more money we get, the more effective we can be and the more Brendas and Dylans we can hire. And so every small dollar contribution, $60, $120 a year makes a difference. If we can get 10,000 people in America right now that are, fully gung-ho on longevity to give $60 a year, then we can hire 3 more people to help, build the mission from there. And that actually goes a long way. We can hire lobbyists and policy developers and things like that. So that's the higher hanging fruit. If you have $60 that you really just want to get rid of, I know everybody has that urge to just throw away $60. No, I'm just kidding. But if you have $60 that you're willing to part with, and you want to support, in my opinion, the most worthy cause in the world, I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. You should become a member. And if becoming a member and donating is not in your budget for whatever reason, there are other ways you can get involved. The main way is by sending letters and emails to your representative. And so we do every Wednesday, we do a call to work with people who want to send these letters. But basically, we have a web link. You click on the web link, you can customize your letter, and it sends it to your representatives, your senators, and the president, right? It takes literally 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes to write these letters. If you go with the standard template that we provided, it takes less than a minute. And our goal is to get hundreds of people per week sending these letters out, because that's when members of Congress actually take notice of these things, right? If I send a letter once a week, then it's, it kind of just gets thrown in the bin, or not in the bin, but it's not as prioritized as, if 5 letters are sent in a week, but to the same congressperson, or 10 letters. And, the more letters we send, the higher it elevates on their list of priorities. So my ask to all of you is join as a sponsor if you can, join as a member if you can. And then even if you can do that, or if you can't, send these letters, send these emails out, because that actually makes a big difference and is such a low hanging fruit ask for all of you. It's, it takes less than 5 minutes per month and actually can make a world of difference.
And where can they join you? What they should go to your website, or what is the best way to do it?
Go to our website. There's a link on our website where you can sign up to get the email that we send out each week with the link to send these emails. And yeah, that's basically it. Just go to our website, sign up for this, and you'll get the email each week. You'll also be put on a Google Calendar reminder too.
And that's a4li.com, or what is the
A4li.org. Yeah.
Org. Okay.
Don't go to .com. I think they, Brenda's laughing. We looked at a4li.com once, and I think it was some scam website. So don't go to a4li.com. We should probably get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Org.
Yeah, org, that's good to know. And yeah, it was a great conversation. But before we wrap up, I would love to hear from each of you one piece of advice for what do you recommend our audience to do in order to live better longer? What is the one advice that you have?
I'm not the scientist, so I'll let Brenda go first there, but I have my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of low-hanging fruit, right? Like all the lifestyle interventions that are pretty accessible. I really need to work on my sleep. So I have to, not look at my screen past 10 p.m. if I can help it. But I think being around community is really important, right? Because I think we were stuck in like COVID times where we just like, entertain ourselves and do a lot of Zoom calls, and that's really exhausting. So those are things that I like to do and bring people together. I'm hosting a hike in SF next weekend, and 45 people are coming, and that's super awesome. And I get to talk about A4LI and meet people who want to be more engaged. So like that's something, like no one needs, you don't have to ask permission to do that, right? Like just build a community around yourself, and I think that's one of the best ways to stay happy and stay like, less stressed. And then, of course, as we're waiting, there's so much cool stuff happening at the bench too. Whether it's reading up on partial reprogramming and other cool companies doing cool things like Senolytics and stuff like that. There's so many books too. I feel like there's so many longevity books that you can go check out. The library, which I totally forgot was a great resource if you don't want to buy a book. So yeah, I'm pretty sure if you visit your local library, you'll find, a book written by Nir Barzilai or like David Sinclair, right? Like it's such a great place to be and like get more information about it. So yeah.
You stole my answer, Brenda. I was going to
Sorry.
say, my grandfather, like I mentioned at the beginning, is he turned 98 last July, about a month ago. And my grandfather credits his longevity to really one thing, and that's his social network. And that's something I think is getting harder and harder to come by. As like Brenda said, we're virtualizing everything, but it's as important, if not more important, than like the lifestyle and the dietary aspects of this whole thing, of this whole longevity one puzzle, right? I break longevity into the way that Ray Kurzweil kind of discusses it in his Singularity is Nearer book. We need to stay alive and healthy in the interim while these drugs and therapies are being developed. And so, over these next couple of years, as the drugs are getting further and further down the clinical trial pipeline, make sure that you stay as healthy as possible. Make friends, eat better, sleep more. I got like 5 hours of sleep last night, so maybe I'm not like the beacon of maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I should take my own advice. But seriously, the social aspect cannot be understated in how important it is. When you look at places, the blue zones around the world, that is like the one unifying factor there. There's different diets, there's different lifestyles, but the one thing that they all have in common is they all have strong social circles and networks. So make some friends, you longevity people.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more with you. There is a lot of data that show that if you just do the lifestyle changes that the two of you mentioned, you can increase your lifespan by up to 20 years. I think about 20 years is a lot. How much would you pay to live 20 more years than what is expected? So I think that as of today, in my opinion, there is not yet a drug or a supplement that can do as much as we can do just by exercise well, sleep well, eat well, social network for sure. And all of us is in our control. So definitely a great wisdom from you. And I want to thank both of you, Dylan and Brenda, for sharing your insight with us today. And for our listener who want to learn more about getting involved in A4LI, you can visit their website, a4li.org, and follow them on social media. I want also to let our listener to know that if you enjoy today's episode, please like the podcast and leave a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's really help us reach more people who are passionate about longevity and healthy aging. And thanks again for joining us on Longevity by Design. This podcast is produced by Insta Tracker, and we'll see you next time when we continue to explore the science of innovation and policy shaping and the future of human health span. So thank you so much, Dylan and Brenda.
Thanks, Gil.
Thank you, Gil.
Thanks for listening to Longevity by Design. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Longevity by Design is powered by Inside Tracker, a personalized health optimization platform that helps people improve their lives by improving their bodies from the inside out using personalized, science-backed recommendations for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more, visit insidetracker.com/podcast.